I'm not going to talk any more about that. We're here for GWIs, what consumers really think of media. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to John and Phil to take things over. John, over to you.
Thanks, Sam. And thank you, everybody, for joining in on this. Phil is based in New Zealand, and well, we won't hold that against him. What we're going to go through today, there's two parts to the presentation. One is just an overview of what consumers actually think of advertising. And of course, within that, there's obviously media and the different channels and how different channels perform. And then I'm going to hand over to Phil, and he's actually going to take you through a little bit of a roadmap and the innovation that's actually happening around GWI. And for those of you who aren't aware, GWI is a global panel and dragging in all insights around media, consumer behaviour, etc., across not only Australia and New Zealand, but across the Asia Pacific and 50 other countries. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen and we'll jump into it. Any questions, throw them into the chat, and hopefully we'll have enough time to get to them at the end. And if not, we'll actually just respond individually. So within the deck here, I'll just quickly flick through. Hopefully you've got my screen there. We're all good?
Yep, all good.
Great. So we're just going to go through a quick introduction, which Sam has already done, so we don't need to do that. We're going to look at TV versus social and a couple of other channels. Then we're going to look at ad resistance and the reasons why people block and don't engage with advertising, and attitudes toward different ad types as well. And then going into a couple of the challenges, opportunities, and then a bit of a summary around what there's about 8 or 10 different talking points that are relevant to the data that we're going to go through here. So the data we're actually using here is actually, it's a report that's come from GW's online research, and it's amongst internet users that are 16 to 64 years of age. So we do miss 65 plus, and that's generally just to keep the sample tight and just to keep it sort of robust as well. So it is all internet based. What we do look at, and when we go through some of this data, you are going to see a few differences, because we're not only looking at Australia data at certain points, we're going to look at some global data. And of course, there's going to be some fluctuations through different countries. But within the data sets we're looking at here, when we're looking at global data, we're looking at around about 181,000 respondents, actually part of the sample, across 47 different countries within this report. We're also going to look at Australia as a segment, and we have about 18,000 respondents within that year that we're looking at that come through in that data. And then we're going to look at some specific questions that were asked. Now, this is a part of the platform called Zeitgeist, and Zeitgeist is where we actually ask specific questions around certain subjects. And that, up until this point, has not been in Australia, but it's actually launched. It has launched in Australia in the last quarter. So now we'll actually start to see Zeitgeist data coming through. So within the platform here, on the right-hand side, when we do send this through, if you're a GWI subscriber, you'll be able to click on the report and actually go to the data and actually start to do your own analysis and start to play around with the data. That little purple icon there with the little bar graph there on the right-hand side, that allows you to click through. And when you get the report, you'll be able to do that. But just coming to this report proper here. No, obviously, over the beginning of 2020 in the pandemic, there was those contractions in advertising. However, obviously since that, and things have become stabilized, we've started to see substantial investments back in advertising across all different channels. But what we've also seen is there's been a considerable shift in media consumption, not only from mass media, but also coming to the digitization, digital media as well. And as we're all aware, pandemic has actually shifted and moved a lot of people not from the more TV-based sort of communication, and have forced them into more the digital space. And what this has done is really forced marketers to reevaluate their marketing and their channel mixes. So what I want to do is jump into the data now and just take you through this. And where we've been able to apply Australia data, we've actually done that. So what we actually see here is just the changes that we see versus Australia versus the rest of the world. And what I found interesting actually digging into this data here was actually how strong Australia was versus other markets when it comes to TV as a brand discovery tool. So the question asked here is what types of channels or ad types do you use for brand discovery? And one thing as omitted here is search, because search comes in at the number 2, but it's not really an ad type. It's obviously just the Google search aspect of it. But what we see here is that TV actually outperforms all other channels and in particular in Australia, we're actually, based on the data we have here, we are actually higher users of TV as a brand discovery tool. And it's not difficult, as you can see from the data here, to identify the strength that actually TV actually has in the mix here. TV continues to hold the ground as the most effective ad type for brand discovery. And even if we broaden this to actually include search, it actually continues to actually be #1 within the actual mix here. There are deeper shifts at play here, and we've obviously seen that change over the last 5, 6, 8, 10 years. However, it still actually performs a very, very strong role, particularly in Australia, in a brand discovery tool, and is obviously a strong part of the actual marketing mix. So coming to the next slide here, when we start to look at the TV ad the different ads versus different marketplaces here, and we separate Australia here again, Australia mimics more the activity or the ad consumption from North America and from Europe, where we look at the percentage of consumers that are actually using TV ads as that discovery tool at 37% of consumers broadly across all those groups. And then we look at social media ads that we have 25% of consumers who are actually using social media as a brand discovery tool. And then obviously website ads, so ads appearing on any website, news, or whatever it might be, where we're seeing 21% of consumers responding saying this type of ad they use for actually as a brand discovery tool. When we look at other countries and emerging economies like Middle East, Africa, we do see a slightly different use and role for social media. And particularly when we start to look into Asia, when we look at those channels there, they have a stronger role to play as well with social media and other website ads. But also what we do see coming through in the data, when we actually get a little bit deeper into this data as well, is the role of recommendations and review sites actually start to play a much more interesting role when it comes to social media and digital media. So, but also when we start to segment this even further, and we're more than happy to provide this data if anybody reaches out, when we start to rebase the data and look at Gen Z and millennials, we actually start to see they get closer. And in certain aspects or certain channels, in certain countries, we see social media actually starting to come up as the most preferred channel for brand discovery. Looking at TV time consumption, and Australia does differ from the rest of the globe here as well, and I'll come to that in a moment. But when we look at this slide here, what we've seen over an extended period of time since 2012, we've actually seen viewership actually decline from 2 hours and 15 minutes per day back in 2012, now down to 1 hour and 54 in 2021 on TV. But we've seen the increase of social media consumption going from about 1 hour and 30 a day up to 2 hours and 24. It's quite interesting. And I suppose that over the last couple of years has actually stabilized, and we haven't actually seen the growth that we've had in previous years. But a lot of the growth we're actually seeing there as well is driven by new users as well, and deeper users, in particular when you're looking at younger generations coming through. When we look at Australia, the time consumed hasn't actually crossed yet, which was when we started to dig into this. It was a little bit of a surprise to me that I thought this would have actually, based on the data you see from time to time via other sort of data sets, you would have expected the time to actually cross in general. However, what we're seeing here is that not only has TV time actually, stabilized, in the last 18 months, we've actually started to see TV time actually increase again. We are heavier consumers versus the global data set, but what we're seeing here is that the average time on TV has started to come up into that 2 hours and 24 minutes again, where it had actually declined over successive periods. But what we see in this data is actually the continued increase of social media consumption, time on social media coming up over the period from 2013 through to Q1 of this year in 2022. They're getting very close now. Social media has actually come over that two minutes mark. However, it's still slightly less time per day than TV. This question here is starting to now drill into people's activity. And this is here, this question here that's been asked here, the percentage of respondents who have actually clicked on a promoted or sponsored post in social media in the last month. And within this data here, as a brand discovery channel, we see social media has remained relatively flat in the last few years, despite the rise of time spent on that channel, in particular in Australia. What has changed, however, is the propensity for consumers to click on these ads. Since 2016, every region has seen an increase. With the exception of Australia and a couple of other regions, we've actually seen that flat line over the last 12, 18 months. This reflects a growing level of comfort and trust around seeing commercial messaging in our news feeds, but also serves as a useful indicator on showing that these ads are likely becoming more relevant over time through obviously better targeting and better content. And then within this, we also start to see the influence of other channels like TikTok and Reddit coming through as well. So just breaking this down even to different channels, and this, when we start to split out the global versus the Australian data set here, this was actually quite an interesting one for us to actually look at, because I wouldn't have expected the gap to be so different between Instagram local versus Instagram global and Facebook local versus Facebook global here. But what we see here is also Instagram stands out as the highest share of any user clicking on ads. We see Facebook coming in at second. However, the interesting thing that we've actually seen here is actually within Australia, the rise of clicking through ads on the likes of TikTok, Twitter, Snapchat, etc., coming through much higher than what we're seeing from a global perspective. And not that saying that Facebook and Instagram still aren't valuable, they clearly are within part of that mix. However, we're seeing the emergence of those different channels. And when you start to dig deeper into this, and we're going to touch on this in a moment, the entertainment value that people actually get, or even the relevance of content that's available on Reddit or TikTok to that individual is encouraging them to actually engage and click through on more of the ads they're actually starting to see within their feed. So ad resistance. When we look at this, the question here is how do you actually react, and how do you actually manage your online privacy? And what we see here, around 7 out of 10 of the respondents, right across the whole base here, so that's 181,000 respondents, are regularly taking some measure to actually protect their privacy. And how we see that actually playing out is, and what we see here in the blue line here, the blue-purple line is the global database, and then we see the Australian database here. In Australia, we actually see around about 59% of people are actually clearing their browsing history and cache fairly regularly, and ensuring that they're not have cookies laying around everywhere. But what we also see is the growth in Australians using ad blocking, and we have around about 33% of the respondents here said they actually regularly use an ad blocker to manage the ads they're actually being served, or actually obviously to clearly block the ads that are being served. And then we're also seeing a desire to actually use private browsing modes within Windows as well, to ensure that they're not being tracked. All this adds up to, within Australia, we're actually seeing a behaviour of more people than, I suppose, when we look at the other countries that we've measured this against, in protecting their privacy, but also managing their ad feed as well.
And just also to validate this data, one of the other technology platforms that we work with in Australia is actually a tool to help audit and mitigate the issues associated with blocked and lost cookies due to the browser that people are on, clearing their browsers and VPNs, kind of ad blockers, etc. And we're absolutely seeing real life kind of clients where over 60% of their data has been compromised by this. So although these numbers look really high, there is also ways that you can have a look at it client by client and see what their exposure is, because the implications are really huge from a measurement point of view, and all the optimization that you're doing to understand, are your ads actually working, who's seeing them, how are they responding as well.
So digging into the reasons why people are actually clearing their cache, private browsing, employing ad blockers. And then the main reasons that we start to see here are mainly to do with ad fatigue rather than privacy concerns. Ad overload and frustrations towards ads getting in the way are the most cited reasons for by considerable distance. In Australia, we're more likely to use ad blockers due to too many ads getting in the way, and the relevance of ads highlighting a need for better targeting, enhanced content and messaging. Other areas here, that which also pop up is that people do believe that obviously ads have an impact on their device's performance. And the other thing, right down the bottom there, we have 35, close to 36% deploy ad blocking to stop companies collecting data about them. Attitude towards ad type. So I just want to quickly flick into this one. And what we've done here, this question here, this is now not the global data or the Australian data we've been talking about. This is specific to the UK and the US through the GWI questionnaire. Now, we've actually looked at some of these questions and validated across some Australian data. And we do believe that what we see here is very similar to what we'd see in Australia if we were to ask these questions here in Australia. But also what we actually do see here is that TV ads are based on the responses here. 70% of the respondents say that TV ads are more memorable, they're more informative, and they're actually, they're quite helpful as well. Not as helpful as when we look at email marketing. And the difference here is both positive and negative adjectives are combined into a composite scores. We start to understand just how much more favorable TV ads are viewed compared to other ad formats. By age, TV ads come top of all age groups, but it's amongst all older age segments where they establish their strongest position to differentiate versus other formats. When we start to look at here, email marketing plays a very strong role in being informative and helpful. And where we see TV ads also play that very strong role of being informative. So in general, TV ads actually tick a lot of boxes versus some of the other mediums. But what we also see in this area here is that we start to see social ads and web ads being far more intrusive. And obviously, we've seen that in some of the other averages being through around people now taking action to actually block by the use of ad blockers. We start to break it down by different age groups here. TV ads still does come up as top here, but then we start to see social ads and web ads actually come up in younger age groups. But then we actually see it start to break down when we get into these older age groups as well here. This data we actually see here is an average score. So the question here is how people actually would rate an ad, so either entertaining or informative. And when we see what we see in the data here, we actually see that TV ads are appealing because they entertain, whereas the other formats tend to be more useful and beneficial and more informative. In their ability to entertain, TV ads have gained a level of acceptance which stands out far and above the other formats. While the other formats are still indispensable in any ad campaign compared to TV, their effectiveness is much more reliant on how strategically they're used in the buyer's journey. So how they're actually used in that flow. So when we look at that journey from TVC to awareness through to action, it's really how these different ad types actually sit within that user journey. Information needs to change at different stages of the journey, and seeing as irrelevant content at the third leading cause of negative brand engagement. So that's where I think the other channels like TikTok, etc., come up a little bit higher because the content that's being served is far more targeted and relevant to that actual user. The question here is how people are actually engaged in the following actions. So when we look at this data here, what we're actually starting to see is consumers who typically discover ads via social and website ads, as we'd expect, are more likely to click on ads, clearly because it's actually at that point where they're obviously seeing the ad so they can click through. And then also using that ad to then go on and research and find out more about that brand. This also shows that that lower favorability scores don't necessarily undermine the effectiveness of these ads as well. TV ads remain the cornerstone of brand building, but digital ads can more effectively elicit a response purely because of the timeliness of that ad being served. But that doesn't take away anything from TV ads. And we're obviously seeing, even with the other data sets that we have from TVC into search, we see that correlation happening more increasingly over the last couple of years. The question here is a percentage of consumers who typically discover products through these channels who expect ads to do the following. So when we look at the data that we see here, TV ads, as you'd expect, give you product information. So over indexes by by 19%. They're expecting TVCs to actually be entertaining, but also as we've seen on many of the channels, you know, there is much more call to action and some form of discount. And that's an expectation that consumers now have of TVC ads. When we look at social ads, and this is where you start to see through social and social channels, not only within Facebook, Instagram, but obviously within Reddit, TikTok, etc., and other channels, is actually this area of recommendations. And the ads come across not only within feed, but actually through other people contributing, as give me personalized recommendations around the brands that may be relevant to me. The other thing within social ads, consumers responding that the ads need to be relevant to me and my identity, and promote diversity and inclusivity as well. And this is a theme that starts to come through over the last couple of years, that the ads that are now being shown and served need to not only just obviously be informative and entertaining, but they need to show that diversity and that inclusivity to the actual user. Within email marketing, call to action, provide discounts, get me engaged, allow me to click through and actually hopefully buy something, give me personalized recommendations. So within the actual email, not only just product information, but also case studies or actually stories around customer success. And obviously within that ad as well, similar to what we see in social ads, that they need to actually promote diversity and inclusivity. So ensuring that we're capturing that wider audience. Website ads, recommendations comes through. That's what the actual ad expectations are, and be relevant to me and my identity. So better targeting and much more relevant content, and teach me something new as well. So there's some really interesting signposts here around being informative, being diverse, and actually particularly within a digital sort of environment, ensuring that we draw through this idea of recommendations and personalization. So when we start to build this out here, and this is the attitudes and behaviours by regions, and we start to look at how Australia actually differs here. So what we see here is that, as we've already identified, now in Australia, we're 33% of the population are regularly using ad blockers. And we also see 21% actually are avoiding, very similar to the US and Europe in regards to avoiding all types of ads, and tend to buy brands, but also 19% of us tend to buy the brands that we've seen advertised. However, this is the other interesting thing here, is that this comes now to the content and the visual aspects of the advertising, that only 10% of Australians feel represented in the ads they actually see. And that's across all channels. So we still see we still see coming through that great ad, entertaining, but I don't feel like I'm representing that ad. So no, I think that's an interesting aspect of that dialogue between channel and creative, ensuring that the creative actually fits the channel as well, ensuring that the creative is actually not only seen as being diverse, but actually fits the target market they're actually talking to. Trying to actually pull something that's actionable out of this, and this is one thing that I think is actually really quite important, is these older age groups of Gen X and Boomers within this group here. So what we actually see here is that Boomers and Gen X actually feel in particular in Australia, feel very underrepresented in ads. Well, we only have 2% of Boomers that actually feel represented in the ads they're actually seeing across all channels. When we look at Gen X, only 8%. It is down versus all channels, but you see when we look at the actual the wealth segment, or sorry, the wealth that these two segments in particular have, Boomers and Gen X, we have some high levels of wealth that are available. However, they don't feel represented in the ads. And when you start to look at when they do see the ads, they are lower than the global, but also under index versus other segments in the market in regards to buying the brands they see in ads. So we can start to look at this correlation between, do they feel represented? Is the content right? Is the channel strategy right? Within the ads that are actually being served, because this is probably one of those untapped areas, is ensuring that we've got the right content, the right channels for Gen X and Boomers to maximize the ad effectiveness and obviously revenue for the brand. So here's a couple of summary points here that we'll send through to you in the report. TV ads are still king, despite the doubters and obviously the big discussions of TV on the slide and demising and being overtaken by digital. It's still a very, very important role, very important channel, and it is in general favoured by all as a preferred channel for brand discovery. As long as boomers are a considerable force in the consumer market, TV will be one of the best ways to accessing their spending power. Social media ads are also a crucial touch point. The number of people discovering brands via these ads hasn't shifted much in the last couple of years. However, it's obviously still a very important challenge to ensure that we not only serve the right ad, the relevant content, but make it entertaining and informative. The number of people clicking through on them has changed across different channels. However, what we're starting to see in Instagram and Facebook, in particular in Australia, we're seeing a flattening and a coming off of people clicking through on those ads. Entertaining and impactful creative is still key in cutting through across all channels. Ad resistance is mainly the product of frustration towards ad overload and ads ruining the online experience. Privacy does play a role, but it's a relatively minor role in driving ad blocker usage. The data is very clear on how detrimental too many ads can be on brand perceptions, and a measured approach with personalized recommendations is actually still desirable, and something which we can constantly encourage our clients to explore is how they use recommendations and personalization. There is a contradiction in the ad industry. A long-standing focus on younger generations has left older groups at the margins, feeling underrepresented in the ads they see. Yet these same older groups are embracing the technology traditionally targeted to younger consumers. They also have the most spending power and should be considered when we're actually planning not only creative, but also our media selection as well. But that is a very quick run through, and I'm pretty much on time. So I'm now gonna hand over to Phil. Phil, just let me know when you want me to click over on different slides. Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Bye.
Hey everyone. So now we're going to be going through the GWI product roadmap for the year ahead. So if we can just jump on, John. So when we think about the roadmap and what we're prioritizing, we'll be talking in the context of now and also what's coming up next. So now is these priorities that we're focusing on absolutely kind of right now, and next is what we're going to be looking at in the next 3 to 6 months. But to truly understand what we need to prioritize for customers right now, we need to look at the state of humanity at this very moment. So at this stage of 2022, we're at a point in time where the pandemic has become endemic. And when we say endemic, we mean something that is natural, widespread, or native to. In other words, something that is endemic is normal. So as everyone has been saying, we're kind of in the new normal. So as we learn to live with our new reality, there are 3 types of people emerging. First of all, we've got the nostalgics, and these are the people that are longing for the world to return how it was before. They're out and about, they're regularly in the office, and they're traveling once again. Up next, we have the hybrids. These are people that are embracing the opportunities that a remote world has to offer them. They may work from home and then nip out on their lunch break to meet friends for a coffee. A hybrid world offers these people total flexibility with their lives. And then finally, we've got the remotes. And these are people that have completely adopted a remote way of living. They work from home exclusively, they order their shopping online, and they catch up with friends on video calls. And what's really interesting is that historically, it's always been younger people that have driven digital change. But when we think about these 3 groups of people emerging from an endemic pandemic, it's actually the over 30s that are the adopters of these kind of hybrid and remote lifestyles. And we can see this reflected through society. We know that since the beginning of the pandemic, the amount of baby boomers in the US buying groceries online has increased from 1/4 to 1/3. And this growth has remained stable since the initial pandemic-induced spike, meaning that it looks like it's set to last. So those that were previously resistant to digital are increasingly becoming reliant on it and also choosing remote lifestyles. So we're now living in this hyper-connected digital world, and adoption of digital has been hugely accelerated by the pandemic. We've got ordering groceries online, attending meetings remotely. They're no longer kind of luxuries or the niche actions of early adopters. These are just a part and parcel part of life in large sectors of society now. So it makes sense that our methods for understanding people are digitally driven as well. So the pandemic has fast forwarded all of us into becoming tech native. It's no longer just the younger generation. It was inevitable, but we're here faster than we ever could have imagined. So in order to connect with people and where they're at in this digital age, we're building solutions that are linked to these three core pillars. So trusted, which is vital to ensure that global data is fueling your business objectives, and it's reliable, housed in a platform that you know is sound and trustworthy. We're also prioritizing inclusive insights that are available to you in an accessible platform. Understanding humanity should be shared right across your organization, allowing for full transparency to achieve true data democratization. And finally, we understand that you need connected workflows, and it's important to be equipped with instant insights for a rapidly changing world, and also be able to make action out of these insights as well. So our mission at GWI over the next 6 months is to prioritize these needs, and this is how we're going to do it. So first up, we've got trusted, and we need to feel really confident about kind of using this data. And our data spans 48 markets, including some underrepresented areas. Our surveys have got over 150,000 profiling points. And to keep your finger on the pulse of what humanity is really thinking and feeling, we get answers from over 1 million respondents every year. In addition to using data that you can trust, you need a sound platform so that you can make sense of what people are actually thinking. And at GWI, we prioritize high standards of explainability. We want you to know exactly where your data is coming from and also how to interpret it. So optimizing charting of the platform. So there'll be some changes coming up with default filters that carry over your settings from different areas in the platform, like from audiences to charts or charts to dashboard. And this will only make sense if you've used the platform, but previously you had to do a little bit of resetting as you went. So it makes life a lot easier. And we're also adding in audience sorting and much more coming later on this year to help you when you're creating your charts. And this is really key in terms of understanding your data, but also kind of presenting it across the organization as well. And as John kind of mentioned, kind of upfront, stealing my thunder, we've got some more up to the moment data becoming more available in more markets. So Zeitgeist, which is the data set for topical and timely insights. This is currently in field in Australia, and it's going to be released on the platform really shortly. And this is a really interesting data set. So as opposed to the core data set, we were asking the same questions year after year after year. We can get great trending data. Zeitgeist is asking kind of really topical kind of moments, and very excited to have this kind of in the Australian market. All right, next up, we're prioritizing an inclusive experience. And we want to make sure that it's really easy to be able to kind of share your data and insights kind of right across the organization. And so really key here is this ability to distribute these insights kind of seamlessly right across the kind of all of your teams, and we're just making it a lot easier with different functionality right across all the different charts and dashboards and tables and things to be able to get this data kind of out and make sure everyone in the organization kind of understands what's going on with your audiences. So in progress now, we've got the ability to create dashboards a lot more quickly and easily. And one of the new functionalities on the platform has been the ability to create these dashboards, but frankly, it was a little bit time consuming. And new enhancements are cutting down the time to create these dashboards by up to 70%. So you'll be able to do all sorts of new functionality, add multiple charts on the fly, change all of your sorting. So it's going to make that whole dashboarding experience kind of much better as well. And just released literally in the last few days, as we've got this new search functionality, and this gives you the ability to be able to surface all the insights and data right across the different platform in a really kind of easy to use kind of search-based interface. And coming up next, we've got the ability to be able to discover hidden insights in moments, and this is really an automation in the background to be able to help you derive insights out of this huge, complex, changing data set. So this is going to be a really, really kind of exciting moment to kind of help you get even more out of the platform. All right, our final priority is connectivity, and this is all about what do you do next with the data. And also just released, it's been a busy couple of weeks at GWI, is the functionality where you can now smoothly add GWI audiences to Facebook. So essentially you can build ad campaigns that reach your target audiences without needing to manually replicate them in Facebook. So in the back end, we've mapped all of the different GWI kind of dimensions and attributes to those in Facebook, and it's literally a one-click push that audience off to Facebook. So the beta has just launched, and next out of the box is going to be kind of Google Audience. So really, really exciting where we can take the kind of insights into action in the platform. So this has been a very hotly anticipated new functionality on the platform. All right, and lastly, in addition to the quarterly waves that are available with all of our refreshed data, we're exploring some different ways to be able to get some more timely, relevant data into your hands. So GWI has teamed up with the social consumer segmentation platform Audience, which helps you kind of enrich data with social attributes. So Audience works with Twitter and Twitter data sets and gives you kind of really, really rich data, which helps you understand the why of kind of what's happening, whereas GWI gives you the ability to understand kind of what is happening. So that's a really, really kind of, again, interesting, exciting kind of extension of the platform so that you can use this in different ways as well. That wraps up the roadmap.